of that. We're starting a new series this month called The Call of Duty. Now, I know this is a video game, and we're not talking about the video game, okay? So just get that out of the back of your mind. I want to talk about the Call of Duty. I love how Cambridge Dictionary defines it. Call of duty, the feeling that you should do something because it is your duty. There's a call of duty. Over the years, I have read books, listened to podcasts. Back in the day when I was growing up with my dad would buy these things called cassettes. I don't know if you ever remember those, but there would be book on cassettes that my dad would get, and it was always about great men. I love learning about great men. There are some brilliant guys out there from our history who have changed the way we see life. Especially as Americans, we hear about guys like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln. Coming into modern times, we hear guys like Martin Luther King Jr., even guys like Steve Jobs. They changed the way that we see life. Great men. As pastors, we read about great pastors who have changed the way we see and understand life. And almost all of us have this little bit of an inkling or this little bit of a desire in the back of our mind to be a great man, a great woman. Now, we sometimes get to a point and a stage in our life and we kind of accept the fact that we're never going to be a Steve Jobs. We're never going to be a Mark Zuckerberg who's, at 20 is doing phenomenal things that we just can't even imagine. But almost all of us get to a stage in our life that no matter how old we are, we want to get through life knowing that we have made a difference. Call of duty. Most of us desire to be great. But what does it mean to be great? The reality is to be great simply means you have answered a call of duty. There is something that you have seen that needs to be done, and you have simply done it. You'll never lead probably most of you, and I can't say this about all of you because some of you guys have done some phenomenal things already in your lifetime, but most of us will never lead great armies into battle. We'll never write a computer program that's going to change society. Most of us are not going to start businesses that known worldwide. But the reality is that we can answer a call of duty. As followers of Jesus Christ, we also find ourselves faced with a call of duty. Jesus, from the very start of his ministry, called his followers to something more. In fact, he called his followers to greatness. Now, the early disciples, when they were called to follow Jesus, they were absolutely enthralled by what Jesus had called them into. As they followed, they began to see that Jesus could do things that they had never seen anyone else do. Jesus came along the scene and he did things such as turn water into wine. Now, I know for some people that was the game changer right there. Others, he stopped and he fed them by simply taking a few fish and a couple breadsticks and breaking them. And he fed multitudes. He was able to heal the sick. There were a couple times he raised the dead. And one of the most important and amazing things that they found that he could do is that he could silence his critics. You see, when Jesus looked at his disciples and said, "Come follow me," they were excited about the possibilities. Here maybe is the one, the Messiah that's going to come, the one that is going to crush Rome, going to kick the Romans out of our country, get rid of the phony puppet government that we have, and we can be great. And as his followers, we will be in line to rule and govern people. There was an idea that they could be great. And so when Jesus said, "Come, follow me," they heard a call of duty that they wanted to do. The only problem is as Jesus continued to move on in his ministry, there was this problem. Jesus failed to organize his government. As he began to say, "Come follow me, I'm going to start a new kingdom. Come follow me. I have a new movement that is starting. Come follow me." And people were following. Crowds were getting behind him. They saw great things. They were being part of great things, except this government that they expected never would formalize. The problem is Jesus never came along and said, "All right, I have 12 of you, and now I need to organize you into some kind of a grouping. Someone needs to kind of be second in command, so if anything happens to me, you know who's in charge," right? Every great organization needs leadership. Now, we know this. This is just what happens. The only problem is as this organization or as this movement that Jesus is starting is growing and the crowds are getting larger and larger, Jesus fails to put any kind of organization in process. He doesn't stop and say, "Peter, James, and John, we know you guys have a special relationship with me, and so I'm going to make you guys second, third, fourth. I'm going to make you a general. I'm going to put you over administration. We need someone who is head over finances," even though he did have someone over finances, by the way. His name was Judas. And he kind of fell off the scene. And if you don't know that story, we'll get there another day. But as they were going along the scene, there's this realization that Jesus, the crowds are growing, the people are here. We need to get this thing rolling because if we're going to get Rome on the run, we've got to get some organization. And Jesus didn't do it. He stopped doing it. Now, James and John understand that this needs to get more formalized. And one of the things that we don't understand is that we think of James and John as humble fishermen. The reality is, as we understand, as we read through the book of John, we actually understand that James and John come from a more of a prominent fishing family, probably a wealthy fishing family who owned a fleet of boats, and they probably weren't quite such poor, humble fishermen as we think they were, but they were probably part of a larger fishing family. They were used to, in their industry, getting things done. They were probably movers and shakers. And the reality is as they're starting to try to get things done and Jesus is not moving, James and John call in their greatest recruiter, the one who has been able to get more things done than they could ever imagine, and they call in their mother. I just want to take you to a little passage because I find this interesting. Okay, two grown men who have laid aside part of their business to follow Jesus, and I don't know how to get Jesus to do something. And so who do they call? In Matthew chapter 20, I just want to kind of read Matthew's recollection of this moment. In Matthew chapter 20, he tells us what goes down, and here's how he puts it. Then the mother of James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to Jesus with her two sons. Now, she knelt respectfully to ask for a favor. What is your request, he asks. And she replies, in your kingdom, please let my two sons sit in places of honor next to you, one on your right hand and the other on your left. Good start how to be second and third in command, isn't it? But one of the things we don't understand, James and John probably came from a very wealthy family. They had been trained their whole lives to lead. Their family had workers underneath them. And they're saying, we know how to get the job done, but Jesus isn't doing something. Mom, would you maybe come along and just kind of help Jesus kind of get himself focused? You see, they knew who controlled the power in their family. Who was the one who got things done? Well, it was Mom. Now, I want to be kind of fair with you. James and John were not timid guys themselves. These were not guys who were kind of, we need to call Mom in to get. Here's the reality that we know about James and John. When Jesus called them, James and John, the sons of Zebedee, he didn't call them James and John, the sons of Zebedee. He got to a point where he said, I got a new nickname for you. He turns around and he calls them James and John, the sons of thunder. These were guys who were outspoken. They were used to getting their way. They were dynamic. These were probably naturally born leaders who couldn't get Jesus to get focused. They were simply trying to push the ball down the road farther, faster. Come on, Jesus. Hey, we're going to have to call in our mom. She's the one. When Dad's kind of struggling to get focused, who do we call? Get Mom in. Now, when Jesus hears this, it's kind of interesting. He doesn't get angry. He doesn't get upset. In fact, he doesn't even really address James and John's mother. What we read is that James and John, Jesus, I hear you, Mom. And he turns from her and he looks at them. In other words, he knows where this request is coming from. This is not from their mother. The request is being made by James and John, who's trying to get him to get motivated. He turns around to them and he responds to them in this little way by saying this. You don't really know what you're asking. Are you able to drink from this bitter cup of suffering that I'm about to drink? Oh, yes, they replied. We are able. I want to kind of reword this just a moment in a different way. This is not biblical. This is the New James Version, okay? So okay. Here's what he's asking. He's saying this, the great positions that you are asking for are reserved for men who are great, who have answered an extreme call of duty. Can you be those men? Now, their answer is yes. We've been born for this. We've been trained our whole lives how to lead. We were trained to be great men. In fact, we follow you. We understand if we're going to go out after Rome, there is going to be some hard times. We get it. That's what we're signing up for. We understand there's going to be losses. We understand there may be bloodshed. We get that. We can take this cup of suffering that you have and we will carry it with you. We are great men, called to great acts of duty. Now, let me just say this. How many other disciples were also following? There were 10. How many other disciples had given up their careers and their businesses and they put them on hold? How many others had been tax collectors, fishermen who had owned their own little companies? There were other men who had chosen to follow, who were ready to do great things. They were convinced that Jesus was going to kick Rome out of Israel. They were convinced that there was going to be a new kingdom that was going to be set up, and they wanted to be a part of it. They understood. They were sacrificing. They thought this duty was theirs to be answered. And when they understood that James and John had pulled a little sly, sneaky, get mom into kind of, it did not go over well. This is not what we have signed up for. Peter or James and John, if you're not man enough to just come out and do this, we don't know what happens. But we get this feeling that they are not happy because this is not, hey, hang on. How dare you ask to be second and third? We have a right for these positions as much as you do. Give us the opportunity to prove ourselves the way we need to prove ourselves. As Jesus is looking at him, he's already made a statement. This kingdom requires great men who can answer a great call of duty. But they've missed what their calling was to. They misunderstood what it meant to be great. And Jesus pulls them aside and said, you're struggling to understand. Why are we struggling to put a second and third in command? It's because you haven't learned how to do great things. You haven't understood what greatness looks like. He continues to stop and he pulls the guys together and says, there is a call of duty and I'm looking for great men, but you've missed it. Jesus responds and here's what he says. You know that the rulers in this world, they lord it over their people, and the officials flaunt their authority over those that are underneath them. We get it. We understand. Somebody's second, somebody's third. There have got to be guys who lead, and there must be guys who follow. The guys who lead make sure that they understand that those who are underneath them understand that they are followers. They got it. There are guys who get paid more, and there's guys who get paid less. There are guys who are favored by the government, and there are guys who are out of favor. Those who are in favor flaunt it over those who are out of favor. Those who make more kind of make sure their position is understood by those who make less. We get the drift because guess what? After 2,000 years, the same system is still in place. As Jesus is looking at his kingdom, as Jesus is looking at us, as he's calling his followers, he looks and he says this, but among you, it will be different. Whoever wants to be a leader among you must learn to be your servant. Whoever wants to be first among you must become your slave. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others, and to give his life as a ransom for many. We understand the idea of greatness that has been set up by society. It still reigns. It still is king. It is still, we call it the golden rule, don't we? He who has the gold rules. We get it. We understand there's a pecking order. And Jesus says, you guys, you're right. I need great men who will do great things. But the idea of what greatness looks like has failed to understand. You've been sitting with me. You've been walking with me. You've been talking with me. You've heard what we've had to say, what we've been talking to, the people we've reached out and touched. And yet you still miss it. All of us look forward to a time when we can move up the ladder. And Jesus looks at us and he says, if you want to look at what it means to move up the ladder, it's more important how you see others. Not who you are over, but how can we better serve? How can we better meet the need of someone else? Jesus says that a life of greatness is a life of service. A life of greatness is not about sitting and turning society on its head, but a life of greatness is about doing what we know we're called to do and simply doing it. A life of greatness is seeing someone who needs a hug and giving a hug. A life of greatness is being able to stop and seeing someone who is hurting and be able to put your arm around him and say, I care. A life of greatness is being able to see something that needs to be fulfilled and that needs to be done and simply says someone needs to put their hand up and do it. It's not glamorous. It's not glorious. It's greatness. When James and John went to their mother to stop and say, hey, you need to move Jesus along. You need to get him to focus. I don't know what they were thinking. I'm assuming their mother was a force of nature and she had the ability to get things done. I'm not sure what they were expecting to have Jesus say. I don't know if they began to say, Jesus, they were expecting Jesus to say, okay, James, I'm going to put you in charge of administration. John, I'm going to put you as the lead of my army. John, I'm going to send you over to the general. I met a general over in Egypt, and he's quite brilliant. I'm going to send you over there to learn how to do military tactics. I don't know if he was saying, oh, you're right, we need to get this thing divided into regions more. We got 12 guys here. Maybe we need to divide Jerusalem into 12 different regions, and I'll set each of you guys over a region to govern these so that you can begin doing your recruiting. I don't know what they were expecting. Yet Jesus knew that James and John were going to do great things. And they were going to answer a call of duty. It was never in the way they expected. It was better. They never wielded a sword, but they changed empires. They never sat and wrote great philosophical, theological books, even though we do have some writings from some of these men. Instead, their letters to groups changed the way we see life. They turned the world upside down, not by the amount of money they earned or by the armies they led, but by the people they served. They never became lords. Instead, they mastered nations. Look, as a follower of Jesus Christ, over these next few weeks, we're going to talk about the call of duty we've been called to. There is still a need today for great men and women. There is still a call of duty we're all called to. Some of you guys have done amazing things. Some of you guys have led armies. Some of you guys have been in great administration parts. Some of you guys have done some amazing things that my brain cannot wrap itself around. But the greatness we're called to is more than that. It simply isn't being faithful, caring, serving. Not reaching down to someone, but instead learning how to push someone up. Great men and women are needed. And our life and our society is full of great men and women that you've never heard of. But they change families. They change the places they work. They affect communities. They affect nations, and you've never heard of their names. They're called. You have a call to duty. God has called you to greatness. We need them. We need you to do great things. We need you to answer your call of duty. Let's bow our heads in prayer.